to. It's not an issue. All right. So, core idea. No run plays work. Every single run play is defendable, and if defended perfectly, there is not a single actually truly good run play. Every single run play relies on defensive mistakes. And that's why, essentially, you have to find that mistake. That's the job of running back, right? You're always going to have to find a mistake somewhere and exploit it. And you have to find the imposter. And the way you do that on a really basic snap-to-snap level is just going to be reading hats, right? So you might already know about this, but the point is you have you're going to start in one direction, and you are simply just reading hats, right? So here, Chubb's aiming for a D-gap here, and he's reading this, right? And shoot. And he's reading the tight end's block, except the tight end's losing, so he can't go outside anymore, so he has to go inside. And he goes to the next block, and he reads that hat now. And he's reading the tackle's block, and the tackle starts losing, so he reads the next block, right? And the next, and the next, and the next, until he finds somewhere decent, and he picks it. And what you see is that you can actually notice, just purely for his head movements, that this is exactly what he's doing, right? So if you pay attention to where he's looking at the player, then at the player, then at the player. And he's picking based on that, right? Another really good example here. You can see we were pretty old because this is when Nick Chubb was still arguably the best running back in football. Right, another example, he's reading this again, and this is lost, right? It's lost to the outside. If it was lost to the inside, you can bounce it, but it's lost to the outside, so you have to go inside of him, right? Then you go to the next, and you go to the next, and here you have your running lane, right? The last one, this one's an outside, like a really outside going run for a counter example, and this one is really clean, right? So you have your block in space, you have your lead blocker, and you just read the lead blocker, and you wait for him to decide, and he's going to decide, so you go inside, right? If the lead blocker had, I gotta bring up Epic Pen. Hold on, give me a second. Right, if the lead blocker had gone like this and taken the outside shoulder, you go outside of him and you take that lane, right? So you just read hats, and if you read hats well enough, you can find the imposter. That's the idea of vision, really. It's this. And essentially, the more things you're seeing, the more chances you have to see fuck-ups, which means the more you're able to punish and the more yards you're able to get, right? The best running backs, fundamentally, are the running backs that are able to threaten the most gaps, the most gap threateners. And that's because, like I said, no run plays work, so you have to find weaknesses, and it's more likely that if you look at 4 people, one of them's going to fuck up, than if you look at 2 people, it's less likely that one of them fucks up, right? Which gets us into another point, because just because you can see things doesn't mean that you can punish them, right? And the amount of gaps that you're actually able to threaten depends on your range, right? So you see, if you're able to hit all this, well, you have less people that you can threaten. If you're able to hit all this, you have more. Seems pretty simple, because it is, but the solution is just be fast, right? As a matter of fact, running backs that are fast are able to threaten more gaps, because some running backs don't have the ability to fully threaten the edge or fully threaten the cutback, right? Just athletic, agility, like how fluid you are as a mover, all of it builds into that. There are some running backs that are fast but aren't very good at like cutting and bending runs back. A really good example of this would be Derrick Henry, right? It's really fucking dangerous on in terms of speed, right? He's able to threaten the play side really well, but as a cutback guy, underwhelming. I say it's both, right? It's exactly what I'm talking about. Some guys are going to be able to say, okay, I can threaten this and this all the time, but I don't really have access to these gaps because I'm not really the most agile. I'm not able to cut really well. I'm not able to change direction really well, right? So that's a type of physical profile. There are some running backs that are the opposite, that are really agile and really able to change direction, but they don't have the straight line speed to really threaten the edge. So they're going to have access to this, but they're not going to have access to this stuff, which limits them as well. It's just in a different way. So I have a few examples of this, and I actually have some perfect examples for what we were talking about. So, all right. So you see, this is an outside zone to the left. And he's aiming here, right? Why is he aiming there? Because he simply does not have the juice to aim here, right? I think you can see it from his approach, but he simply just does not have, he's not playing it super fast. But even if he was, he doesn't really have the speed to really like threaten the edge here. And that means that as a result, even if he can see what's happening with this double team and like what's happening over here, he's only actually ever threatening this 2v2, right? He's playing this, reading hats, and punishing wherever the defense fucks up. That's what he's doing on this play. He's not able to do anything about this 2v2. Even if these two guys absolutely fucking destroyed here, right? Because the player can flow, because this guy can flow over, he just doesn't have access to them because he lacks the range. And that means that his vision's effectiveness is limited, right? So he's playing this 2v2 and he's reading it out and he's playing based on it, right? And he makes a good decision because he's reading hats properly. This is another example of what we were talking about, right? This is an outside zone to the right, and he's able to really threaten the edge, right? You see he had access to that really, really wide like E gap because he's got so much straight line speed, but there were points where he didn't really have like the change of direction available because he was obviously like sprinting it, right? Because he's playing it purely for speed. I'm not saying Etienne's really like lacking agility here, but he's playing it purely for speed. So here at this point, he only has access to this, right? He doesn't have access to any cutbacks or anything like that because of the way his body's pointed, because of the way he's playing it technically. And so that's also limiting the amount of gaps he can threaten, right? It all comes down to how many gaps are you able to threaten? Are you threatening them? That's essentially the core point that I'm getting at. And a really good way to show that is the best running back of all time, Saquon Barkley, right? Here you see, this is an inside zone to the right. So he starts, he's aiming here, right? And look at how many gaps he's effectively causing defenders to have to defend properly. Right? Like, this is a point of range because most of our running backs, because they don't have the insane bullshit athleticism that Saquon has, don't have the ability to punish mistakes on the backside like this. And that means that he's able to find a lot more errors in a play than any other running back would. Because he can do stuff like this, and he can punish stuff like this. And he's forcing 6 players to do their job properly instead of 3 players to do their job properly, which is obviously a lot harder, right? So movement is range. And the better athlete you are, and the more mobile you are, the more gaps you can threaten. And the second aspect is you can actually get a better range from technique because it helps you change how long you're exerting that range. So if you remember the Etienne clip, right? The one thing you'll note is the fact that Etienne is not square at all, right? He's playing it really laterally because he's sprinting, and that's normal. But a thing that happens a lot to running backs behind the line of scrimmage is they'll turn their shoulders and they'll start effectively take away gaps from themselves because of the way they're playing it footwork-wise. Whereas if you ever watch any Saquon play ever, you'll notice that he's insanely square to the line of scrimmage, right? This is another one. This one's fucking bullshit if you have seen this clip before. But you'll notice how square he is to the line of scrimmage, and as a result, how long he's able to keep exerting his range, right? Because if he had turned his body, he cuts away a gap from himself, right? If at this point, he decides, okay, I'm going to hit here, and I'm going to sprint in this direction to pick up speed. And I read this hat, then I read this hat, right? He's still playing this fine, but he's taking away half of the field from himself, which means his cone of potential opportunity is going down. So that's vision, that's range, that's punishing play. Second thing that you have to worry about as running back is cutting versus bending. So the point of this is that not everything has to be a cut, and you need both. And being bad at either will limit your range. But sometimes you need to bend, which is you arc your run, you keep your speed, you keep accelerating. Sometimes you need to cut, which is, I mean, you probably know what a cut is, right? But the idea is you have more violent change of direction, you have more access to, you change faster, but you lose speed. Hold on, where am I? Are these my clips for this one? Yeah, really basic, right? This is a really good example of just like a cut, right? You can't bend this run. You don't really have that choice. You need to cut on, you need to cut here, and if you don't cut, you're screwed, right? Oh wait, no. Oh wait, no, this is another one. Like, example of what I just did earlier, right? This was back to here. Apologies, I got a bit lost. I haven't done this in a while. So you see how square he stays? Right, that allows him, because he's staying really square of the ball, he's staying really aware, and he's keeping himself like uncommitted longer. He's able to access gaps that normal running backs don't have access to, on top of being a disgusting athlete, right? But he keeps access to the range longer than other running backs do through technique and athleticism, if that makes sense. Now back to what I was doing with cuts and bends. Right, Derrick Henry, not a very good cutter. Probably the best bender, like one of the best benders in the league, but he's not a very good cutter. And you can see when he cuts like this, he really loses momentum. And this is like a place where you need a cut, but if you don't cut it well, you're gonna be lacking in terms of like what you can access as running back, because he doesn't really have access to this lane, even though it's the correct lane to take. Right. I think I had a counterexample with him with a bend run. There you go. Right, and here he's bending the run instead of cutting it, and you can see he's able to pick up momentum that way. This is part of why people always talked about like Derrick Henry as like a bit of a bulldozer, and he still is, right? Because he's really good at bending his runs, and he's really good at building up speed, and that's what sort of makes him a weird back that is a really, really good outside zone back, who is also a power back, which is a really weird profile, because usually outside zone backs are quicker guys who can really have that insane range and threaten the edge. Is there a way to get better at cutting? Yes, but there's also an amount of it that's biomechanical, right? Players who have a really high center of gravity will always be worse cutters. Players who are heavier, because there's so much more mass to move around, will always be worse cutters. The best cutters will always be the players that are the most twitchy and the most explosive, and although there's a technical aspect to it, a big part of it is just like your physical profile as a player. It's usually, players tend to usually improve at bending more, because it's something that they sort of have to learn. Jahmyr Gibbs is a player that had to sort of get better at bending runs in the league and struggled with that. Zach Charbonnet is a player that has dealt with a similar issue. Right. Another quick example. Right. Like, you can see like this is just isn't fluid. You have an elite back who just lacks range as a result of lacking the access to some of like upper end cuts and bends. And the idea is you need both. Both are useful. Both are used in different situations. If you have more range, because if you think about it in terms of layers, right, there are the gaps you can see, the gaps you can access through your range, and the gaps you can execute through your technique, right? That's sort of like the three layers, and the result of that, right, the result of those three filters is the gaps you actually are able to threaten. And the bigger this is, the better, the more gaps you see, the more imposters you find, the more yards you can get. So back to the key idea. Pro players are really good. Right? Yeah, let me start again a bit slower. So back to what we said earlier, right? There are no good run plays because every run play is defendable. So finding gaps is nice and all, right? And it's really nice to find weaknesses because that's obviously useful. But what if there are no mistakes, right? What if there simply is a properly defended run play? You can't just die, right? Like, that's not an option. So you have to create the mistake. And that's the next layer, which is the point of running back footwork. And the concept is hilariously simple. It's make your offensive line right by going where you don't want to go. So what's going on here? Chubb's got a play where the fucking run scheme fucked up, and it's a bizarre misdirection with a fucking QB keep and a puller, right? What happens is that he ends up with a one-on-one against this DT. This is really bad because this fucking, like, Teller really fucked this up and just lost his block completely. And Chubb wants, in some way, to have Teller be the one that picks up this block, right? This hat is on this side, so technically his lane is here, right? This is the lane that Chubb is supposed to take on this based on reading hats. That lane is not open. It's objectively not open, and even if he tried to take it, there's so much space for the defender to block him and tackle him, and he's just sort of screwed. So you need to find a way to make Teller be in the right on this play. And the way Chubb's going to do that is he's essentially going to tell the defensive player, using his feet, I'm actually running here, by the way. You need to match me here so that Teller has time to recover and he can squeeze into the space. Right? So watch it again. So it's basically a juke, right? But the idea is I'm lying to the defender so that my block can land, right? That's the core concept. You lie so that your blocks can land. You'll see this on almost every single play from a high-level running back in the pros, and it's a skill that usually you need to learn in the pros. Very few running backs come out of college doing this, right? Really good example here is exactly what was happening with Trent Williams, right? So you see, the second that McCaffrey sees this, right? The second he sees this, he already knows he wants to head outside, right? You can almost see it in his body language, but you need to take an inside angle because what happens if you start by going vertical, right? If here he darts and he starts going outside, all these linebackers are going to flow over. This guy's going to flow over, and you're never going to actually have your outside lane. So what you do is instead you take 2 steps forward, and then you take it wide. Because that way, these guys have to flow in to match you, and then you bend it out. Right? And this plays into range as well, because you remember what I said? You can exert range longer. Let me bring up the Saquon clip again. Right? You can exert range longer through technique and athleticism. Right? And this is the same thing. Right? What's happening here? What's happening with 54? He wants to go here, Saquon, but he can't because that lane's closed. Right? If he goes here, Kendricks is tackling him. So he needs to lie and say he's actually going to hit here and then bounce it. And a really good linebacker is going to stall and try to play both. Right? He's stalling, he's playing both, he's waiting for running back to commit. And he's waiting him out, waiting for the linebacker to have to commit, and then cutting it. Right? the concept is you make your offensive line right. The 60, like this double team, they played this like shit. They didn't get any movement, they didn't get any displacement, and yet at the end of the day, they pick up both the linebacker and the defensive tackle because running back has the choice to make them right in this situation. You can see it a little bit more here, right? The way 99 has total control over this block, right? Like the guard is not in control whatsoever over this block, so he will go wherever the running back is aiming. And if a running back here goes just purely vertical, right? He tries to go immediately like this. He's gonna shed and go inside. So what you need to do is you need to show out and then cut in. That way he stays outside and you take him with speed, right? So you show outside and then you cut it in. And you can find this like example everywhere you look with top running back play. This is McCaffrey doing the same thing, right? You wait for this to land, you wait for your fullback to have a lead block and on the outside shoulder, right? And only then do you actually take it outside where you actually want to go. Because if you do it before, if you do it right now, then the linebacker is going to adjust and you're going to be screwed, right? And you're going to have to cut in and you're going to have support coming in for you. So you manipulate the defenders to land your blocks. Last example. Right? You see what he's doing on the play side? Oh, wait, no, this is a different clip. Yeah, this is just him having fucking disgusting range. I mean, McCaffrey's such a freak. But you see how he slow plays it? Because he's slow playing it, so he's trying to get to read all this. And you remember earlier the ETN clip where he was sprinting at full speed to get to the edge? An athlete like CMC has the absurd ability to be able to start going at full speed later and still threaten the edge, which is what makes him such a cheat code, right? Because at this point, he's only half-assing it, right? He only actually starts sprinting almost when he's past the tackle. And that allows him to exert range longer and over a wider cone for a longer amount of time than normal human players, right? And that's sort of it. Like those concepts with range and influencing tackles and how long you're exerting your range, that's basically all there is to running back technical play. That's sort of everything that every single running back is doing. You can sum it up just with these three concepts. And everything else is just execution, a bit of athleticism, and after that is just like open space, elusiveness, and tackle breaking. Any questions? Apologies if I wasn't super eloquent. It's been a while since I did this presentation. If you have good burst, good burst gives you more range. So let me go back to this image, right? Good burst gives you access to these gaps more, right? Because this play, right? This one. Wait, no, sorry, the other one. This one. This isn't like this is not about long speed, right? This here, the lacking like range, it's not about long speed. It's about like just explosiveness, and it's about how much you're able to build up speed in like a really short, like 5-yard window. So running backs with good bursts are the ones that are able to threaten these gaps more, right? and they're also often the ones that are able to cut back and speed up more on the backside as well. It's just everything that comes into movement tends to go back into range. Being fast is the best way to be a rangy player. That sounds really stupid. Like, oh, the best way to be good is be good. Like, oh yeah, but fundamentally, right? The more access you have to different players that can fuck up, the more you can punish players who fuck up, and that just makes you a better running back. The home run hitting is a bit of a bonus, right? It's more of like, okay, I found a really good win, and then I was able to beat some guys in the open field. That's where my home run comes from. But not every player really always has access to home run hitting, because that's a lot of the time something that's happening because players in the second level and the third level are fucking up or getting beat. And that's not always something you have control over as running back. What you do have control over is sort of how much you're punishing on the first level, how much you're beating players in the open field, and how much you're creating for yourself by influencing defenders. A really good example I would give of this is like 2023 Saquon, I believe, like his last year on the Giants. I think he had like 2 runs over 25 yards or something insane like that. And it had nothing to do with him as a player, as we saw the year after that, right? It's just that they weren't putting any pressure on teams with the pass game, so there always was a second level or a third level defender, and he just wasn't able to really get those breakaway runs. Right? Well, I'll stop here then. Sorry for leading you on so long.